Thanks, Ted. How are you?
Yeah, sorry about that. The moment I clicked it, it started an update and it's just back.
All right. Well, welcome aboard here, and thanks to everybody for coming. I just wanted to remind everybody that we are recording this because we had a number of our stakeholders that wanted to participate but weren't able to be here today. So we're going to be sending this out to the MCLA group. But thanks again for coming. And just a reminder that this discussion, political views, my opinions, or the folks' opinions here don't reflect any position of MCLA or any of its constituents. So just a note there. So great. So we'll start with a 2-minute open statement from either of you guys, and then we'll do about 30, 40 minutes of core issues that we talked about, and then we'll have a rapid fire no round. So I have a coin here, and we'll give the supervisor the option since he's heads or tails.
Heads.
It is heads. So
All
you
right.
choose if you want to go first or
Kevin can go first.
there you
Oh,
go.
thank you.
All right, you are up.
Well, hello, Ted.
Hey.
Um, yeah, to make it real concise for the group that we're dealing with and we're speaking with today, I'll just jump right to my career. My career was 30 years in municipal recreation and parks for the city of Dana Point. And one of my challenges and direction was to provide tourist serving businesses and support of our hotels uh, to generate revenue both in the sales tax and bed tax realm for the city of Dana Point. That included providing essential services that would attract people, both structured and unstructured events that brought people to the city of Dana Point to spend their tax dollars. Both the revenue from the hotels and from visitors serving businesses generated a considerable amount of money for the city of Dana Point and helped provide essential services, both with our contract services for the county of Orange, but also the law enforcement services for also through the county of Orange. In that process of working with the hoteliers, I also had an ongoing collaboration with the county of Orange, and also an ongoing relationship with the Chamber of Commerce. And we worked in partnerships to make sure that we maximize the marketing potential for the city of Dana Point, and also realizing that once people came to the city, not only for the single serving events, but when people had a chance to come on a vacation at a future date, Dana Point would sell itself and people would return and stay in the hotels and spend their tax dollars. I see that same thing happening here in Mendocino County. It is a tourist destination. We have an increase this year, or actually this last fiscal year, both in sales tax and bed tax. So that shows that we're doing it right. And that shows that the businesses that are operating the visitor serving avenues that people come both looking for the recreational experience, walking through our natural environment, our using our beaches, walking through our redwoods. Those are all what bring people here. And I have an experience in generating that type of interest and enthusiasm.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. Ted, you want to give us a little 2-minute update on you?
Yeah, so I'm running for a third term. There's a whole lot of reasons why I am. There's probably some why I would rather not. And I'd say the biggest one why I am is if you've asked the county for anything, any data, any financials, you probably run into the same frustration that county's not in a position to generate what you need when you need it. And for decision making, that's a real impediment. You want to make decisions based on what's happening today, not based on what happened 3 years ago. And spotting the issues in Mendocino County isn't very hard, but it takes a deeper understanding that comes from time invested to understand technically why it's broken and the roadmap to get to where we should be, basically parity with a lot of other counties. Mendocino County is operating like an 1850s county, passing paper between offices. and reconciling way after the fact. It's not that over the years you probably heard that the software is bad. We need different software. Software is fine. The software that's used by other counties, we're just not using it properly. We're doing manual overrides. We're having departments hand over records in paper form, even if it means they have to print it out in paper to give it to somebody else who does the data entry. And so a lot of those some of that problem is highlighted in the state audit. When I read the news, I see talk about the Board of Supervisors should feel shame that the state came in and did an audit. If you go back and look, we actually wrote a letter begging for that audit. We had tried to get Senator McGuire to help us secure funds for that audit. The union stepped forward and also asked for it in writing. That was to memorialize problems that a lot of us had already discovered, but get it all into one document and get the credibility of the state highlighting it's a problem. A lot of this is not under the Board of Supervisors. Counties have fragmented leadership. Your sheriff doesn't report to us. District attorney, same thing. We have no control. Auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collection, treasurer, elections office, assessor, they're all independent. And so it takes some collaboration and strategy to move the financial piece because it touches those offices. And if they're not willing, or if they're not staffed, or if they don't have the motivation, it's not going to happen no matter how much the Board of Supervisors says we need to do it and we're doing our part. So I feel like that's the biggest thing that's been underway for a number of years, and I want to carry forward because I think it touches everything else we do, and I think it probably has an impact on your interactions with the county.
Thanks, Ted. Appreciate that update. Okay, good. First section of questions I want to share back and forth between you guys, and I'll give you a minute or two each. Just give us a short synopsis reply. And since Ted elected Kevin to be first, I'll have him start each question, and then Ted will answer the question secondarily. So the first question is, tourism is one of Mendocino County's largest outside dollar economic drivers. Do you see lodging as an asset to protect, a tax base to regulate harder, or both?
I think I think we have a very vibrant lodging industry in Mendocino County. I think where we're lacking, unfortunately, is the ability to effectively market our product to not only within our region, but also nationally. And I think that the Board of Supervisors, when they reduced the funding for Visit Mendocino and the bid, I think that impacted a lot of the tourism that we might get more on a national market rather than just a regional market. We're getting a lot of interest, obviously, from both Sonoma County and Mendocino County and down into the Bay Area. But I think we could generate a lot more tourism, a lot more interest by really having an aggressive marketing program, and it needs to be funded by a partnership with the BID and the County of Mendocino.
So you think that's more of an asset to protect versus a tax base to regulate harder?
Correct.
Okay, Ted.
Yeah, I would also say asset to protect. You might remember I was a dissenting voice on cutting the match. I still think it's a mistake. You have a different board today. I think if it were tested again, we might find a different outcome. You're always going to have staff saying, if you do that, you're going to have to cut some core service. You don't have the money to do it. I'm not so sure about that. At the end of the year, there's $12 million. Some of that is one-time carry forward, but I imagine some of it is from positions that are recurring that haven't been filled and won't be filled. If you look at other counties, Monterey, I think is a good example. Other counties that invest in marketing, there's a return not just for industry and for wage earners in the community, but there's a return for the county tax base as well. It may not be that it's actually a net cost, the county putting out money. We may see those dollars and then some return. How should it be spent? I think best to leave it up to industry. I don't think you want the county in the driver's seat on how to market the county of Mendocino. I think the private industry does a better job at that.
Great. Thanks, gentlemen. Second question. Do you believe independent inns and owner-operated lodging should be treated differently from investor-owned short-term rental portfolios? And if so, why? Kevin.
Yes, I think there should be more of a nod to the people that have invested their livelihood here in Mendocino County. I think encouraging and supporting not only the family-owned lodge ownerships, but also the short-term rentals where families have had to look at supplementing their income by having short-term rentals. I'm real concerned about the impact that we might have with outside investors coming in and oversaturating the short-term rental market, and thus putting a added uh, crunch on choices for lodging, and also the possibility of reducing revenue for those existing operations.
Thanks. Ted?
Well, I mean, my personal preference is, of course, family-owned businesses, people who are really part of the community, have a vested interest here. There's only so much a county can do. You can't stop somebody from, Kansas or New York from buying an establishment, whether it's for personal or for business purposes. And you really can't set different rules because of equal protection. So if you look at other jurisdictions that have tried this, and I'll tell you, the board gets lobbied regularly by the public that we shouldn't allow outsiders in. I mean, we'll raise our hands. How many of us would be considered outsiders? I was born here. My parents were here. My grandparents were here. Am I an outsider? Right? Some would say you're not fifth generation. You're an outsider. Um, uh, if you look at other areas that have tried to set rules on that are different, depending if it's a corporation or an LLC or a private owner, if they live in the county or if they live somewhere else and how long they've been there, most of them get sued, and the county ends up being on the losing end. It pays out, so not a good use of public money. And I think there's more viable ways to build community, build strong industry than trying to pick favorites, arbitrarily deciding who's in and who's out.
Okay, good. And then one more question in this section, and that's, would you support a cap on additional vacation rentals in District 5 if it protects workforce housing, or do property rights prevail? Kevin?
I would say yes. I would protect and put a cap.
Okay. Ted?
So it's in black and white answers are difficult, and I'll tell you why on this one. I've had people, more than one now, express one was getting radiation therapy, going to Stanford, needed to stay in housing there, wanted to Airbnb her primary residence in Mendocino County while she was away to pay for those bills. I don't think any of us are against that. There's people in the fifth district who don't have enough water, enough sewer capacity to sustain year round, but they can afford a couple weekends in the summer for extra income on a building that's underutilized. I have people that their child is away at college. They can't lease it out full time, 12 months. They have a kid that comes home, but they can certainly use those times in between. And then there's just some people that say they don't want somebody living above them or in their outbuilding all the time. But in the summer months during music festival, film festival, they're fine bringing the extra income in, and they know there's a need. And then I think there's also some people that rent to nurses that are passing through at the hospital, and that's certainly a win for community. So when you look at these individual cases, you notice that if not for the ability to short-term rent, it would be underutilized. It wouldn't bring revenue in, and it wouldn't be workforce housing. So whatever regulation we have, we don't want to be penalizing people who really aren't taking away from workforce housing. Caps might make sense in outside of Fort Bragg city limits, perhaps, where you could argue that's workforce housing, whether or not it's technically in the city limit. If you look at the fifth district, which I represent, you have large bluff houses that will never be workforce housing. There's Airbnbs in Little River that, what would market value be for those? 5,000 a month? It's not going to be workforce housing. It never was. And so if you decide to put a cap in place and that additional house in that community can't be used, you're hitting the wage earners who depend on people coming in the summer, right? If you're a waitress, you want visitors coming and staying, and you're impacting county sales tax, events. For I think lodging. If you could argue that short-term rentals are competing with hotels and other traditional establishments, but there's also a theory that you need a critical mass in order to hold events, and events benefit everyone. I see this more prevalent in Anderson Valley. I don't think you could hold events in Anderson Valley if you didn't have some short-term rentals, because you simply don't have enough traditional lodging rooms within close proximity. By being able to hold those events, people stay on the coast, people stay inland for the same event. They don't all stay there, and it's benefiting everyone. So I guess I would say some amount of regulation could make sense. Some amount of cap could make sense. Most of where people are concerned is in the coastal zone, and the county doesn't set the regulation for the coastal zone. The California Coastal Commission sets it. We could come up with a cap. We could send it as a LCP amendment, or an ordinance, but ultimately it would be Coastal Commission that would decide whether or not it would hold. Coastal Commission has to follow the Coastal Act, and the Coastal Act's number one priority is visitor serving accommodations because Californians decided this is the coast for all Californians and making sure people can come and stay here. Some families are better served staying in a house, right? It's maybe more economical. Or when I've traveled with my kids, when they were young, I didn't want to have them separate in separate hotel rooms. I wanted to have them together. So there's a use case for that. And I think Coastal would look at that and say, no, you can't outright ban it, but you may be able to have some sort of curtailment to also make sure there's housing for local workers.
Thanks for that detailed response. Let's move on to permitting. So starting off with Kevin again. So what is your target maximum turnaround time for a routine county permit? Would you say 30, 60, 90 days? Can you commit to a number?
I would have a hard time committing to a number because I think there's many contributing factors. One is the volume of permits. Two is the staffing level. Right now, is planning and building staffed at a level to be able to accommodate a timely review of permits. Sitting on GMAC and receiving coastal development permits on a regular basis, we're getting permits that are being reviewed, unfortunately, 6 months, a year out. Part of that is probably the workload. Part of it is the staffing level. But I really think that it's really determined by the priority of the Board of Supervisors and the CEO to make sure that that department has the essential resources to be effective and be able to turn around permits in a timely manner. Because every delay is costing builders and owners additional money, either through additional permit fees, additional reviews. And right now, the industry is saying that construction costs are going up about 10% annually. So any delays that we have in processing permits is causing future owners and builders in our community a lot of money.
Thanks, Kevin. Ted.
Well, of course, I'm going to say 30 days. I think some of what I see, I think, is outrageous how long it takes. County of Mendocino is somewhat unique. I've talked to supervisors. I set up one-on-ones throughout the state, and I compared notes on what I found looking at 1955 to present. And Mendocino County is somewhat unique, like Colusa County, and we're living off property tax. Property tax under Prop 13 is capped 2% annual increases. We don't have a lot of people leaving. They come here, they love it. Not a lot of turnover to drive that average up. So imagine if I told your business your income is going to rise at about 2.1, 2.2% a year for the next 50 years. Where would you be 50 years out? Probably bankrupt, right? Because the inflation is going to hit you. You're never going to keep up with it. That's the county of Mendocino. So you have every dollar allocated. Part of it is we gave really aggressive cost of living adjustments to try to retain talent, to retain our staff a few years back, and now we're right at the edge of what we can afford. So how do you pay more staff to process permits quicker? By getting cost recovery. And people don't like seeing higher permit costs, but the work that they're doing is mandated by the state, not the county. We don't have local rules. We're implementing the state building code. Incidentally, the state, periodically, there's a new building code and we have the option to vote on it. You may have seen that. Here's the board adopting it. If you don't adopt it, 3 months later, the state imposes it on your county. So it's the illusion of local control. But to carry out what's required in those mandates, especially the planning element, especially in the coastal zone, it's expensive. And getting full cost recovery means being able to hire more staff because it's not an actual cost to the general fund that's using that property tax that's already spent and limited. It's letting the applicant pay their own way. I've been, for the last couple of years, advocating for essentially an express lane don't do all the work internally. If you have an applicant that's going to be held up for 6 months, allow them to pay the county and the county to use an outside firm. There's firms in the area like Laco that do this work. And other counties do this. There's also examples. There's 6 counties in the state I found that allow contractors to issue permits. They self-certify. Some of them you can build a whole single family home. You can build one single family home. The contractor, their license, they have something to lose. Their license is on the line. They notify the county that they're issuing their own permit. Ultimately, that building gets inspected. And so you have the same safety checks off, but you're not waiting for the county to issue the permit. You're letting the licensed professional issue the permit. I think that could be a win in Mendocino County. Maybe not for every type of project, but for some of the routine. I mean, you get roofing permits out of our pipeline. Let roofing contractors self-certify those permits. That's going to free up a lot of staff time to work on more complex projects in the coastal zone.
Thanks. Well, actually, that sort of blends into my next question. So let me share that, and then you can maybe follow up with some more thoughts on that. But the next question was, would you support a third-party professional certification process for certain permit categories to help reduce the backlog? So that's to Kevin.
Yeah, I would support that, because I think anything we can do to make the construction of new homes or commercial structures within a timely manner, I think, is a huge investment for the county of Mendocino. And whatever we can do to mitigate that is important. I agree with Supervisor Williams that yes, the cost should be borne by the contractor and the owner, and not placed on the taxpayer. But I think it needs to be reasonable charges with reasonable expectations.
Good. Any more follow-up thoughts on that, Ted?
Well, reasonable fees would be full cost recovery, and it's expensive when you're paying staff a weighted rate of 110 an hour. Some of the state regulations, like planning and coastal, where you're looking at the LCP, but also reports from botanists and biologists and water experts, takes a lot of time. And I don't agree with a lot of it. You might recall when we had a meeting on the coast a few years back, and I had a room packed with coastal people, and so I thought this is the opportunity to kind of strong arm my colleagues into, let's not enforce needing a coastal development permit for re-roofing, like for like, composite for composite, dead tree removal. I had somebody that got fined down by Manchester $10,400 for not having a CDP for taking down 15 dead trees, 30 dead trees. He had 415 acres. They're falling on livestock. That shouldn't be our priority, to use staff time to go after dead tree removal. They're pine beetle infested and non-native. And also for allowing solar panels on roofs without a CDP. Those types of projects were clogging up our system. After the fact, I went to Coastal to complain, why are you doing this to us? And they said, Ted, this isn't us, this is your county. And there's a document that the county or the county lists what we don't consider to be development. And you could list on there dead tree removal and solar panels and re-roofing. Ours was blank. We just had never we didn't know about it, or we'd never gotten around to it. So that's being fixed as part of this LCP update right now. And I think there's probably more opportunity. But the reasonable cost, it's labor costs what it costs. And if you charge less than the actual cost, it means you're subsidizing it, and you're subsidizing it by not paving the roads. And the county's been doing that for a long time. It's played a lot of gimmicks to defer maintenance on county buildings, on roads, on communication sites, everything imaginable, cutting marketing budget in order to keep up with wages. And so I'd be inclined to charge full cost recovery. I've had contractors tell me they would rather pay a little bit more and have their permit next week than wait 6 months because we're so understaffed.
Okay, thanks, guys. Code enforcement. So do you think it should be complaint driven, proactive, or focused only on health and safety? Kevin. Building code enforcement, I'm thinking about.
Right. I think that we really safety obviously is the number one driver in code enforcement, and timely inspections, making sure that it's done in compliance with these state and county codes. But I also think that we have a responsibility to our neighbors. And if we see a structure that is unpermitted, that is going to impact the quality of life or the value of your property. I think that code enforcement should also respond to those in a timely manner, because that's why they're here. They're being responsive to our constituents. But I think that there needs to be a strong criteria that says anonymity is maintained, because a lot of people are concerned about filing complaints with the county, and with the uncertainty that maybe their anonymity may be compromised and they may have retribution from their neighbors. So I think the strong policies that the county has to maintain anonymity, but I think having community and neighbor input is essential, because we don't have the resources in the county to be able to oversee all of our operations. And I think feedback from our residents is key to making sure that we address all of the issues that impact our county.
Okay. Ted?
I remember a letter to the editor. It was by George Hollister, probably 4 or 5 years ago, and it was he was making a point: if you don't think you're an outlaw, you don't know the rules. And I think there's a lot to that. That if we were to actively begin policing violators of planning and building code, you would shut down this county. You would have mass homelessness, and you would put a lot of businesses under. And I don't know if that's really in our interest. And it's a problem. I want it to be, lawful, and I care about the safety, but you couldn't build any of our towns or cities today under the current building code and zoning and MAP Act, Subdivision Act, and water standards and septic system standards. It would be impossible. You couldn't build Comshy, Albion, Fort Bragg, Ukiah, none of it. So, and then on top of that, you have if we had a motto for this county, it would probably be code violation, and it's including some well-intentioned people that just don't know that they're in violation because there's so many rules on the books. A lot of these rules make sense for places like Los Angeles, maybe for San Francisco, and those same rules are being applied because we don't have local control. We're taking the state standard. I mean, look, the state is trying to close down a hospital in Fort Bragg, the only hospital on the coast, because it doesn't meet seismic. That seismic code is appropriate for a 6-story concrete hospital in an urban environment, not for a single story wood framed building in Fort Bragg. That building is probably one of the safest on the coast. So I think, if you start having the county hire cops to drive around and look for code violations, it's going to be a can of worms that's not good for the economy, and in the end probably won't provide any safety. It's just going to, put people under. Where I do think it's important is I get complaints about the smell of sewage. I think people that have leach fields that are crossing property lines, that's a high priority. That's a health and safety risk. Anything that could lead to fire. In Albion, Little Rivers, 40 square miles, I think I've been to a structure fire at every commercial property in the district. And these are properties that are well built, owners that are really responsible, if they have vested interest, right? They're customer serving. And, visitors aren't quite as safe as homeowners. And, a lot of them probably have never built a fire, and I'm happy that they're doing it for the first time while they stay in our county. But if we're not careful about those types of violations, insurance will become much more of a problem, because the insurance companies are looking at how many fires and how much damage when there's a fire. And so that's like sewage crossing over a property line. Your fire is impacting your neighbor's financial well-being because it's going to jack up their insurance rates.
Okay, let's move on to taxes, gentlemen. Do you believe TOT should primarily fund tourism, general county operations, infrastructure, or public safety? And can you rank those for me? 1, 2, 3, 4. So funding tourism would be 1, general county operations would be 2, infrastructure 3, or public safety 4. Do you believe TOT should provide primary funding for those? And in what order? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You first, Kevin.
I definitely think the money should go back to the people that provide the services, and that would be tourism. We need to invest in it. Our sales tax revenue from Measure P funds our fire safety, so I think public safety is number 2. The infrastructure is number 3. Unfortunately, with the deferred maintenance that we're experiencing in the county right now, Bower Park is a classic example, that routine maintenance would have been a lot cheaper than looking at $2.2 million coming from the state of California to refurbish our park that unfortunately was not maintained at a reasonable level. And I forgot what the fourth one was.
Tourism would be number one, general county operations number two, infrastructure three, and public safety four.
County operations would be fourth. But I think tourism, public safety, infrastructure, and then the county operations would be four.
Thanks, Kevin. How about you, Ted?
Well, I think it comes up in the context of should we have a higher TOT? Ours is one of the lower when you look statewide. And to do that, it's not the Board of Supervisors that taxes the people, it's the people that decide to tax the people. I think it was a mistake last time that it just went to the general fund because it got absorbed for all the routine costs. And the I don't know that the public would support an increase if that's going to be the formula to this next go around. What I think people would support is using that to cover some of the costs that are incurred from the visitor economy. There are costs. The visitors tend to get lost at sea, get in wrecks on windy roads. They use some of our services. Some of that should be paid for out of the tax. Some of it should be used to compound the visitor economy, reinvest and I could see that being marketing, but I could also see it being trail development with AB 2494. You have 55,000 acres that's about to open to recreation. And you look at Bend, Oregon, they have trails and they bring in something like $680 million to their local economy because people want to mountain bike in the winter. There's an opportunity to reinvest in a way that wouldn't target the summer months when we already have a lot of visitors, but would spread it out throughout the year. I don't think that work will get done by the state, even if we change the purpose of the forest to have recreation as one of the prime uses. And so using some of the funds to develop infrastructure that's visitor serving that would bring more visitors here, I think is a way to compound the return on investment. Public safety, I think we talked about general county expenses. I don't think should come from TOT. I think it's been done for a long time and it's been a mistake. But once you put a general tax in place and that money flows into the general fund, you're going to have public safety, sheriff, jail, district attorney, probation, juvenile hall, alternate defender, public defender. You're going to have them eyeing those dollars because they don't have enough. And there's money coming into the general fund. And there's an argument that per the state constitution, the number one priority is public safety. And so the way to make it clear from the very beginning is to permanently earmark those funds for specific purposes.
Agreed. Great. Okay. So I read that as 4132. So not a huge difference between the two of you. So next question. If lodging business are paying substantial TOT and BID assessments, what measurable returns should they expect? Kevin. Measurable return.
Right. I think value for the dollar and basically what you put in is what you get out. I think if the TOT is funding the bid, then they should expect a return on there with increased heads and beds. We could, with an increase in visitor serving businesses in our community. I think that it needs to be returned, and I think it needs to be reflective of the revenue generation that can be processed through the county by investing in visitor serving businesses and operations that support tourism. So I would say that we need to focus on a equal return back to equitable spending throughout our county to serve all of our visitor serving operations, not only on the county, but throughout all of Mendocino County.
Thanks. Ted, what measure?
You're always going to have your coast representatives give you basically the same answer, and there's two. You have two out of five districts include the coast, where a lot of the visitor economy is. I know it's not all of it, and inland is equally important, and I support inland as well. But who comes and how we market to them and what services we provide, I think there's probably a logical split. And my kids are tired of me on vacations taking photos of trash cans everywhere. That's been one of my peeves is I don't want people coming here to stay and taking photos to put on Instagram that show trash down the street. And you may have watched. It's been a multi-year effort to get my colleagues to support trash cans for the town of Mendocino that don't let the birds pull everything apart. People call me, and I run one, and I don't mind, but I can't scale up to the amount of cans. And I realized it won't always be me. Does the next person want to drive to Main Street and pick up trash when the ravens pull it out at 5 in the morning, or the raccoons? That's been such a project, and yet we have more towns that need the same. You want visitors to come here and feel like they're not walking around in an environment that has loose trash belong. And it sounds like something simple, but there's RV trash in there. There's household trash bags. Sometimes they're dropped next to the cans. So those kind of investments in making sure that some would call it a service, some would call it infrastructure, that when visitors come here, there's receptacles for them to put their trash. There's toilets throughout the county in places that visitors frequent. And some of those are provided by the businesses, but it wouldn't hurt to have a few provided by the public that are clean, because people aren't going to come back if they're uncomfortable, and they're not going to tell their friends, and they're going to put those photos on Instagram, and people are going to say this is a county that has trash everywhere. Don't come. So I think that's part of the return on investment. The marketing we talked about, of course, the county should be contributing. It was really short-sighted. We probably lost county revenue by thinking we're saving a few bucks cutting that.
Okay, good. Let's move to the next section, infrastructure. So without reliable water, sewer, roads, and internet, hospitality can't grow. Which infrastructure issue in District 5 is your top priority? Kevin?
Top priority would be water security, making sure that we are able to provide potable water for our visitor serving businesses and our residents. We have challenges on the South Coast because we have two privately owned water companies that aren't necessarily available or qualified for federal or state funding. We also have a water issue up in Mendocino County as well that they're working with in their interior. On the coastal area. And there's also a water issue that's being addressed right now in Anderson Valley by their community service district. Water is important, and I think finding reliable solutions, whether it be containment, water collection, maybe the use of alternative water sources like reclaimed water to be able to provide watering for non-public areas. I think these are strategies that we need to do to make sure that we can provide enough water for businesses to function.
Thanks. Ted, what infrastructure issue would be in your top priority?
I would deprioritize broadband a bit. And I used to be really big on this. And I was holding those banners for the state, Broadband for All, trying to advertise SB 156, historic one-time funding. And then I'd been part of doing the down to the house mapping, down to the business mapping, and came up with 770 million. And then the state showed up with 18 million, and I asked us how to down payment. And they said, no, that's what you're going to get. And we had a lot of back and forth, writing letters to the CPUC. We got the definition of rural county adjusted, and we got it up to 56 million. And also, like 6% of what we need. What do you want us to do with that, especially if you split it in 5 districts? And then the state ended up allocating it to the cities of Fort Bragg and Ukiah and Round Valley. Round Valley, absolutely. They need it. They deserve it. I have no question there. But at the time I scratched my head wondering, my colleague Bernie Norvell, whose district is right out my window. Imagine back in the day when I got electricity about age 9 in Comchi, if they had instead put a second meter at his house in Fort Bragg. That's kind of what we just did with broadband. Is you provided yet another good option to people who already had three options, and you have people that don't have any. But Starlink is available everywhere. I have 250 megabits in my car now, wherever I park. And it used to be I drive to Ukiah and I knew where I could, how I could schedule my day, where to pull off to do an hour Zoom here and drive a little bit, another hour Zoom. Now I have Starlink, I can basically do it anywhere. And I was out in Jackson demonstration forest and in the redwoods and thought there's no way somebody needed to place a call. Sure enough, it worked. So broadband, I think, is becoming less of a need from government in terms of competing resources because there's private options that are working quite well. The water is real, but what comes to mind more is roads and specifically the interface between the public roads and private property because we have visitors that fall in that interface, and it'll be because the county's paved and there's a lip, and there's probably something like a sidewalk or a walkway that was never quite to code, and the two where they meet up, the public and the private, tends to be where people fall. And the county has paid out large cases for the public getting hurt on public infrastructure. But more than that, you have somebody, you look at the average age of the person who comes to our county to stay, and a lot of them are retired. Imagine a retiree posting, photos of the bloody incident that happened because of uneven ground and bad public infrastructure. Not good advertising for the county, right? We feel bad that it happened, but it's also an economic impact. And I think that's something we can fix. We can't repave 1,100 miles of road at 750 to a million a mile, but we can certainly fix that interface between public and private infrastructure. And there may be a creative way in some cases, say the town of Mendocino, just for example, there may be a way to do one coastal development permit to address all of it rather than have each individual property owner have to do a CDP.
Thanks, Ted. Sorry about that background noise. One more question on infrastructure. Would you support county advocacy for an infrastructure grants benefiting coastal lodging communities, not just inland projects? Kevin?
I would support it, but I really think that it needs to be broad reaching. I think that, yes, I definitely believe that there should be some grant funding to support coastal lodging, but I think we are a county and we need to invest in all of our county operations. And I think people in Willits, Ukiah, and the East County, if they have the opportunity to build visitors serving operations, I think we should try and market that as well. So I would support a grant that focuses on the coast, but I really think we need to include all of the communities in the Mendocino County because I think all of the money goes into the same pot.
Okay. Ted?
Yeah, some argue that their individual community is contributing more than they receive, and I think that's fair. In fact, I'm a little bit disgruntled. There's an agenda item sitting out there that was approved about 2.5 years ago, asking the county to be transparent and show the public revenue and expenses per district, and it passed on a 3-2, and nothing to date, and I don't expect anything. And for the expenses is a little bit harder because some of those law enforcement, social services, they don't really track by whose district it is. But the revenue side of it, you could certainly do APNs and look at where the revenue is coming from. That said, in a dynamic where you need 3 votes to set policy, the best strategy is to come up with proposals that lift the entire county. Everyone has to win. Everyone has to get something out of it. And sometimes that means going in together on a compromise that benefits most or all of the county. Other times it means splitting efforts and saying, we have 2 different projects, one for coast, maybe it's even North Coast and South Coast, and we have one for inland. But being mindful of the collaboration element, because otherwise it just dies. It doesn't matter what one supervisor wants. Sonoma County, I think there's a budget per district. Mendocino County has no budget per district, and I have no staff, 0. So my cell phone is basically the conduit, right? And I keep track of my own meetings, and there's no money to spend per district. So the only hope in getting anything done is that I can convince 2 others to come along. And if I can say, hey, look, your community is going to get something from this as well, you need it, to at least 2 of them, ideally all, that tends to move us forward.
Good. Just a quick section here on workforce housing. So, I mean, obviously, how do we house hospitality workers, but there's healthcare workers and teachers and service staff. How do we house them without undermining tourism? Kevin, you're first.
Well, I think the Board of Supervisors had an opportunity at their February 3rd meeting where they were discussing options for short-term rentals. And one of the discussion items was limiting corporate ownership. I think that's something that the board voted to support that concept. It hasn't been finalized. But I think right now, my concern is the impact that any type of large scale short-term rental projects is going to reduce our inventory of long-term rentals or workforce housing. And we don't have the ability at the cost currently to build new structures, to build new homes. So we have to really maximize and monitor our inventory in all of our different areas. I'm concerned about the fact that we have a hard time getting staffing for RCMS, that we don't have a pharmacist on the South Coast because we can't find housing. Fortunately, the Point Arena School District has a voluntary list of available homes to support school staff and teachers should they come to the area. I think we need to have a balanced approach. Take a look at our inventory currently for short-term rentals and lodging. Balance that with long-term rentals and available housing houses on the market, and make sure that the pendulum doesn't swing dramatically one way or the other, but have a balanced approach.
Thanks, Kevin. Ted?
We're treating housing as in a scarcity mindset, that there are only so many houses, and how should government decide that those houses get used, rather than in a healthy economy, if there's demand for more housing, developers build more houses. And the issue here is the part of it is the cost. I went to the International Builders Show about a year and a half ago, and I had the general plan and zoning, and I was talking to potential developers, trying to figure out, well, would they build? Do they know about Mendocino County? And one of them pulled me aside and said, Ted, look, we're building in Pacific Palisades. We've already broken ground in the black, in the burnover. $400 a contracted, $400 a square foot contracted. In your county, it'll be $550. And there was a moment of silence where I'm trying to figure out, why is it 50% more to build in Mendocino County? We're rural and we're cheap. And it's availability of nearby labor and supplies, and reliable government. They know they can get a permit. They're not going to be waiting an extra building season. There's a whole lot of reasons that factor into that. The one that we actually have control of locally, because we don't control labor costs or material costs, we do control land use. We could do a general plan update. And it's been a long time since we've done a serious general plan update. You might recall in the 1980s, this county was shut down for subdivisions for 4 years when a Superior Court judge found that the county's general plan was insufficient. If you read that transcript, one of the proposals at the time was to divide the whole 3,800 square miles of Mendocino County into a grid of 1 acre parcels. It's really good that that didn't happen. That's terrible land use. Like, I mean, you got rivers and hillsides and a grid of 1 acre parcels. But what they did instead of having citizens advisory committees all through the county, calling out the public to show up and raise hands and say, I want this in my community, or I want that. I don't think it had much of a professional planning element to it. It may have reflected some of our community ideas at the time. Some of those are dated, but it may not have structured them really to get at the root of what we even wanted back then, because most of us aren't planners, and weren't thinking about infrastructure, and that you can build affordable housing where you have infrastructure, water, sewer, hopefully broadband, ambulance, the other things that go into it. There's a way to do that in the unincorporated, not just the cities, but only if you plan for it. So I think that the card that the county has in this is not to subsidize housing or dictate how housing is used, but update the plan so that it becomes more attractive to build. I have some people saying that they're maxed out. They have, one of them is a great business, treats their employees really well, has employee housing on site. They can't build any more houses. They're tapped out on how many. When I look at that parcel and I see how many hundreds of acres they have, I think it could support some more housing. It's that our zoning and our general plan doesn't accommodate. And you can't blame the state or federal government for that. Land use is really a local control. And it's about getting the people together and deciding where we want more density.
Good. All right. In the interest of time, I'm just going to go to one more question under leadership, and then we'll do a quick rapid fire yes or no, and then open it up for any questions because I see we're starting to lose a few people. So, I guess my only question here is, what county policy currently harms small business the most? Name just one, and how you'd fix it. Kevin. Hard to pick just.
Yeah. I think and it's not a policy, but I think it's just a practice right now, and that's the tax collection. Right now, I'm hearing from residents that are receiving supplemental tax payments of $7,000 to $10,000 in back taxes that the county was unfortunately either through their staffing level or the volume of property taxes and new taxes coming in weren't able to keep up with the demand. But I think right now the policy needs to really, and the direction for the board of supervisors needs to be a priority with tax collection and making sure that the operation can be fully functional and operate in a timely manner. The state budget or the state audit identified $30.6 million in uncollected property taxes. That could solve a lot of the financial problems that our county is dealing with right now.
Ted?
So the tax collection is a real issue. It doesn't fall under the Board of Supervisors. It falls into the elected tax collector. The place to fix that problem is run for tax collector. Somebody just took it by default because there's no competition in the county, once again. And I think that's a problem. We should have democratic process and talk about what people are going to do as tax collector. And part of it is, I would argue, is to collect the taxes. Because if you're paying taxes, you're not getting your fair share of infrastructure and services today. You're paying for somebody else that's either doesn't get a bill at all or has gotten bills, ignored them, and there's been no collection. But again, not under Board of Supervisors. It's by design. All the way from the state constitution, it's under the elected tax collector. The board's job is to make sure those offices have enough staffing. And incidentally, they have historic staffing level in that office. So it's not a staffing issue. It's more doing it. I volunteered. Let me go in for a couple of weeks and I'll get it done. When we talk about the assessments, there's a lot of houses that are not on the books that they show as vacant land. And you can go around Google Earth and compare and find where the county says vacant land and it looks like a nice 3-bedroom house. And this isn't even back to the land. It's not my parents' generation of hiding back to the land cabins in the woods. These are recent structures that are just out in the open that you can spot. The way to do that is just go through every parcel, pull up the satellite map. If the county says vacant land and you see a house, that's one we forgot. So these are real topics and probably impeding business because business is not getting their fair share of services. Would the tax money, the estimated $30 million, turn everything around? Probably not, because we have something known as the teeter plan. The county pays out to services whether or not it collects the tax funds, knowing eventually it's going to bill for them and collect them and replenish that fund. So that $30 million will go into replenishing the teeter fund, which is paid out taxes to school districts and the like that should have been collected and weren't. So it's not $30 million available to spend. I would argue the county's still broke even after that. It's a good thing to do. It should happen, but it doesn't solve the problem. I think the biggest number one for the impediment for the county is if you were to give everyone involved a bonus for finding a way to say yes, you would have all kinds of approvals. You'd have people racing through, getting their permit, getting their project moving. The culture in this county has been to treat the regulator position as a block, that the applicant has to prove time and time again that they have the right to do something, rather than, hey, we really want to help the applicant. Our job is to get them through the process. We might have to say, you can't do it that way, you can do it this other way. I think the building side has been better. Planning, I think, has been more difficult. And some of this comes from the state, but some of it is also culture.
So less regulation, basically.
Some regulation is open to interpretation. When I see there's 58 counties and I call and I talk to contractors elsewhere and they say that's not a problem for in our county. Well, why is it a problem in ours? It's much easier to put a solar panel on a house on the coast in Sonoma County than it is Mendocino. So, when you see those differences in parity, it highlights maybe there's a way that we could interpret the way they're interpreting.
Okay. And closing question here, and I'll start with Ted on this one, just to switch it up a little bit. So finish this sentence for me. If you own a 10-room inn in Mendocino County, my administration will make your life easier by what, Ted?
I think it's everything we talked about above. It's about making sure that whatever taxes you're paying, other people are paying, so that you get your fair services. Um, um, Understanding that the high visitor flow puts wear on infrastructure, and that we need to prioritize maintenance of that infrastructure because it serves your interest and the county's interest. Making sure we update the general plan so that your 10 rooms have local wage earners that can afford affordable housing. That we're looking ahead to water infrastructure so that we don't tell you we have to shuttle water from Ukiah to Fort Bragg and then you can get a private contractor to haul it in a truck again. It's really all of the above. But the question is, how do you prioritize that and how do you do it on a shoestring? And I think our best option is to give you a voice in the process, let you tell us what's the most important to you, because we're not going to build the county, no matter who's in charge, can't do it all at once. But what we can do is follow your lead.
Okay. And Kevin, if you were a 10-room in Mendocino County, my administration will make your life easier by
Investing in your operation and marketing it.
okay, good. All right, quick rapid fire round, and then we'll just do a quick closing with you guys. I'm so appreciative of your time today. I'm sorry we went a couple minutes over 3 o'clock. I was hoping to end in an hour, but this is a yes or no question. So, cap new STRs. Ted, yes or no?
If it has to be a binary answer, no.
Okay. Kevin?
Yes.
Okay, raise TOT. Ted?
I can't do a binary on that. The question is, how do you get the people to enact another tax, and you do it out of being thoughtful and general fairness.
Okay. Kevin?
No.
Lower permit fees. Yes or no? Ted?
No. Cost recovery so that we can staff.
Right. Kevin?
No.
Mandatory permit deadlines. Ted?
I don't know that it's legal or constitutional, but where possible, we do it with cell towers. But that's, I think, coming from federal law, that there's tolling if we don't say no quick enough, then they're deemed approved by default. We've tried to apply that to other types of building and found that it may not be legal. But if it's legal, yes.
Okay. Kevin?
Unfortunately, I don't think it's attainable.
Okay. Audit illegal vacation rentals. Ted? Yes or no?
It's already happening. I've voted funding it several times.
I'll say yes then. Kevin?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just a couple more. Support employee housing incentives. Ted?
What are the incentives?
That's a good question.
Do you want us to use your property tax to pay for somebody else's?
So is that a no?
It's a ambiguous question.
Okay. Fair enough. Kevin?
I think I would go along with what Ted just said. There's too many open-ended aspects of that question.
Understood. And expand low impact camping. Is that a yes or a no for you, Ted?
It's a yes. I started with I discovered this. We need to shut it down. It's a fire hazard. Better to have smart regulation and decide where and how.
Okay. Kevin?
I will say yes with the caveat. I don't think that we really addressed the enforcement issue and the impact on fire safety to make sure that we have the response time to be able to address issues in some of the areas that the camps are being proposed. So I would say yes to the idea but I think we need to make sure the infrastructure is in place to enforce it and make sure it minimizes the impact on safety services.
Good. And I think I know the answer that you're both going to have for this last one is, do you support tourism marketing with public funds? Ted
Yes.
and Kevin.
Yes.
I'm going to hold you to all those, gentlemen. No, I'm just kidding. Listen, I'm so grateful for your time today. I really appreciate it. John, if you're still with us, I'm so grateful for your administrative of this process. And if you wanted to open it up for any questions at this point, I'm happy to moderate any questions from the group here.
That's great, Cab. And we'll just ask that any attendees raise their hand using the raise hand feature, and then I can unmute you and you're welcome to ask a question. So we'll give it a second for folks to find that raise hand feature. There's also an opportunity to put questions in the chat. I thought it was a very thorough meeting and question and answer session. Thank you, Kevin and Ted, for participating and for entertaining all of the questions. And we're getting some thank yous into the chat as well. So it might have been just thorough enough that no additional questions were needed.
So, Ted, since you let Kevin go first last time, why don't you do a close for us? Just give us a 2-minute roundup of any other final thoughts on our little contingency of tourism and hospitality in Mendocino County.
I'm going to use it to try to encourage you to support Assemblymember Chris Rogers on AB 2494. I think it's one of the most untapped opportunities. What's the growth economy in Mendocino County? It's not resource extraction. You're not going to scale up the resources we have to extract. Best opportunity is people want to come here and spend some money while they're here and then leave. And 55,000 acre forest that offers the potential for recreation could bring people in year round. We, the county, started this about 5 years ago. I brought a resolution asking for to encourage the state to do scientific review on the highest use, just like you would on real estate. What's the highest and best use for this? And it may not just be maximizing board feet. Maybe there's some other compatible uses that can coexist. And at the time, we thought this isn't going to go anywhere. I'm not going to get 2 other county supervisors. To my surprise, we got all 5. And then to my surprise, the state showed up. Jessica Morris, Deputy Secretary of Resource Agency, showed up at our meeting and wanted to work together on tribal co-management and recreation and looking at the highest use. And then Chris and I ran against each other, became friends while running for assembly. He's terrific. And he introduced a bill that's now passed as of yesterday, passed the assembly, and it's over to the Senate, where Senator McGuire is going to be the champion, hopefully. And I think as much support as we can get for that is critical, because it'll bring people here. And it's a way to show them why we want to conserve nature. And while they're here, they're going to spend a lot of money. And I think it's an opportunity where I'm representing wage earners, not just lodging owners and restaurant owners. And they don't have the same ability to work in the winter. There's a lot fewer visitors. This is an opportunity to do mountain bike racing in the winter. And those people are not going to want to camp at hip camps. They're going to want to stay in nice facilities. They're going to want to eat out. They're going to spend some money while they're here. So that's part of my push for what do we do in Mendocino County to turn the economy around within the realms of what local government can do. And I'd certainly encourage your support writing letters and thinking about how, as this passes, you're going to leverage it and what the county needs to do to allow you to maximize that leverage.
Thanks, Ted. Kevin?
Well, I'm definitely pleased by what I'm seeing firsthand, and that's the increase in tourism throughout the coast, traveling up and down the coast from Fort Bragg to Wallala. I'm seeing the benefits of tourism in our county. Our restaurants are full, our lodgings are full. You can go in any of our markets, they're full. We're seeing less open storefronts or vacant storefronts. So that shows that we're moving in the right direction. We've seen an increase in sales tax revenue and TOT revenue. So people are finding Mendocino County, they're investing in it, they're visiting here. And it's not just seasonally, we're seeing it year round. However, I am seeing a shift from short-term rentals to long-term rentals. Example is my neighbor has two short-term rentals that he's been renting for years. He has now turned one of them into a long-term rental and using the other one for short-term rental. So that's showing that people are understanding that there is a need for workforce housing, but also the need to supplement their income with short-term rentals. So I think he's an example of a balanced approach that we look what the market will bear, what the economy will drive, and what will encourage people to come here to Mendocino County. And I'm so pleased to live here, so fortunate. And I'm seeing now the impact of why people are coming here, whether it be Jackson State Forest or our beaches. We're lucky to live here, and I look forward to possibly serving as your next supervisor and continuing the path to success for our county.
Well, thank you very much. And again, gentlemen, both of you, very grateful for your time and support in our business, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Cab, so much.
Oh, my pleasure.
Good to see you, Ted.
All right. Good luck, you guys.
Bye.
Thanks, John. Thanks.